No one knows how or why, but some 4,000 million years ago, the planet Earth came into being. In that time, life has evolved on its surface and beneath, in its waters and its skies.
Humankind is just one of an unknown number of species of plants and animals that share this world. But we are the ones who hold dominion over all others. And every year, we exterminate perhaps 1,000 species in the name of progress, on the pretext of development, in pursuit of profit. We are severing the fine strands which make up the web of life, and the Earth is suffering. But still, the killing goes on.
And time is running out. Imagine the complete history of the world condensed into 1 year. A year which began on January the 1st. A few days later, the first bacteria emerged. A miracle of evolution followed, and every expanse of water, layer of mud, and tract of land was inhabited. Jellyfish and spiders didn't make an appearance until the beginning of November. The first ferns popped up on November the 20th, at about the same time as fish began to inhabit the waters. Winged insects took to the air a few days later. From December the 1st until the 15th, dinosaurs ruled unchallenged.
At 15 minutes to midnight on December the 31st, humankind emerged. Just 2 seconds ago, with the start of the Industrial Revolution, we began an onslaught on the Earth which has brought it to its knees. Unlike our largely vegetarian ancestors, the great apes, most of us have chosen to eat meat. But it isn't just meat that we're eating. We are literally devouring the Earth.
Supposedly, we are the most intelligent of all creatures, capable of complex feelings. And what do? We imprison other intelligent creatures in solitary confinement until they go mad. We deny them the ability to fulfill their most basic instincts. We treat their living, feeling young as inanimate commodities. And then we eat them.
Restlessly wandering fowl are crammed into cages too small to even stretch their wings, or are quickly fattened in dank, dark sheds, often crippled by their ballooning weight. And all face the same end in a precision, automated production line. And then we eat them.
Pain and suffering are relative concepts, we are told, in the pursuit of cheap meat. Don't concern yourself, we're told, about the infections which come with cheap meat. Campylobacter, salmonella, mad cow disease. Meat to live, we're told, ignoring the heart disease and bowel cancer and other ailments which go hand in hand with eating meat.
The environment is a fragile, finely woven mantle which is beginning to unravel before our eyes, and meat-eating carries much of the blame.
We have no physical need to eat meat, yet the world now contains 3 times as many farm animals as humans. Nearly all the major environmental problems which enfold the world like a spreading shroud are made worse by livestock farming.
Livestock have a huge appetite for grass and corn and soya and wheat. So much so that nearly 80% of all agricultural land in Britain is used to support them. It takes as much as 10 kilograms of vegetable protein to produce 1 kilogram of meat, the most wasteful recycling program ever devised. So demanding are they that the soil is pushed beyond its capacity to cope, force-fed on a diet of pesticides and fertilizers.
Pesticides are poisons used to kill weeds, insects, and fungi. They can and do kill humans. We know that they destroy species other than those they are aimed at and can upset the natural balance of ecosystems. We know that they increase in concentration as bigger creatures eat smaller creatures. A water bird like the grebe at the top of the food chain can have pesticide concentrations in its body 80,000 times stronger than those in the water on which it lives. We know that 50 of the chemicals used are suspected of causing cancer. We know that meat contains around 14 times more residues than vegetables. There are pesticide traces in almost all the food we eat. We know that without the need to feed animals, farmers could return to proper crop rotation. They could farm organically and turn their backs on these nerve gas derivatives.
Constant demands on the land to produce more crops to feed more animals are unsustainable. These hyped-up production levels can be achieved only temporarily by swamping the soil with expensive nitrogen-based fertilizers. Some nitrogen runs into streams and rivers, spurring the growth of algae, boosting bacteria, and choking all life from the water. Some filters down into underground reservoirs, where it pollutes our drinking water. And we're left with the constant fear of damage to our children through blue baby syndrome and possible cancers. And yet, if we stop eating animals, the whole population could be fed from just 30% of the land, with no need for chemical fertilizers. It would breathe again, regenerate itself, recover its health.
The world has a new problem. An endless supply of animal excreta stored in slurry form. 100 times more polluting than human waste, it just keeps on accumulating, too prolific to be absorbed by the land. Bacteria turn its ammonia into acid. It evaporates, joins with nitrous oxide from fertilizers, combines with industrial pollution, and forms acid rain. Its legacy is sour, unproductive soil and dead and dying forests, rivers and lakes. Almost forgotten in the avalanche of other environmental disasters, acid rain is devastating the northern habitats of Europe and America. In some countries, slurry is its principal cause. An end to livestock production would dramatically slow the decay. The spreading hole in the ozone layer is a time bomb which has begun to tick. It could explode at any time. Ozone, high in the sky, protects us from the sun's damaging ultraviolet light. That protection is being diminished. The process by which it happens is extremely complicated, and CFCs from aerosols and insulating foam are the main offenders. But agriculture makes a significant contribution by burning, with fertilizers, and from direct methane emissions from cows. We know that ozone depletion will result in increased skin cancers, eye cataracts, and a weakening of the human immune system. If ozone is reduced by 10%, germination of seeds will be affected. We know that some newly hatched fish will be killed, and we fear that phytoplankton, the main vegetation of the oceans, may be destroyed. With it will go the basis of the ocean's food chain and a vital source of oxygen. That is with a 10% reduction. It is believed that the newly discovered hole over the USA and Europe will show reductions of 40%. We are paying a frightening price for our plate of meat, something we don't even need.
rainforests of the world are breathtaking in their complexity. They house over half the world's animal and plant species. They've given us many of our medicines, anesthetics, anti-cancer drugs, the birth control pill. They hold the soil together, absorb rainfall, and new growth feeds on the decay of the old. They produce oxygen and absorb carbon dioxide. They are nature in balance. And our response is to destroy them. Before 1950, 14% of the world's land was tropical forest. Half has now gone, and each year, a further area the size of Britain disappears. And for what? Largely to provide grazing land for cattle, or to grow soya beans to feed to cattle, most of which comes to the developed countries. In 7 years or so, the land will be almost lifeless and barren.
In 1989, the crew of a spacecraft watched a smoke cloud from thousands of fires spread across 1 million square miles of Amazonia. It was rainforest being cleared for cattle ranching. With the burning of vegetation, huge reservoirs of stored carbon dioxide are unlocked, released to float upwards and provide yet more insulation to prevent heat escaping from the earth. When the cattle arrive, each one belches out 60 litres of methane every day, adding another twist to the spiral. Together, burning and belching provide the second largest contribution to the greenhouse effect. The increases in temperature already predicted will bring flood, famine, and mass migration. Tropical diseases may appear in Britain. But as the temperature increases, the tundra regions of the world will begin to release the methane which is locked in their soil. The more that's released, the more that will be released, a kind of ecological, irreversible meltdown.
Nearly 1/3 of the world's landmass is on the way to becoming desert. What was once lush rainforest is joining the relentlessly spreading dust bones. In parts of Africa, the Sahara has travelled 350 kilometres south in 20 years. The cause isn't climatic, it's human. Poor soil is pushed beyond its capacity by impoverished people with nowhere else to go, as animals and fodder inherit the earth. Sheep, goats, cattle and camels overgraze poor marginal land until it can produce vegetation no longer. As weather patterns are altered and rainfall reduces, so the great rivers of Africa begin to dry out. The Senegal, the Niger, the Chari. But it isn't just an African or Asian problem.
The United States, the world's largest consumer of meat, has lost 1/3 of all its topsoil. Huge areas of the western states can no longer support agriculture, and the land may well return to buffalo pasture. As underground water supplies are depleted faster than they can be replenished with rain, the soil ceases to provide even grazing, and the herds move on. And as they do, they consume more water in new places. Livestock's demand for water is as destructive as its demand for food. In the case of beef grown on irrigated pastures, 12 times as demanding as vegetables. In Britain, nearly a half of all arable land is now at risk of erosion as intensive farming destroys the very structure of the soil. It goes with the wind and water, never to return.
Trawlers and seine netters cross the world's oceans, scooping out increasing numbers of ever smaller fish. Heavy trawl boards smash their way across the ocean floor, destroying everything in their path. Every year, more countries scramble to join the killing fields of tuna drift netting, and with each net go the lives of more whales and dolphins, rays and seabirds, turtles and sharks. Some countries continue with their slaughter of whales, mammals with a language more complex than our own, but of which we understand not one word.
Intensive factory farming has also come to the seas of Europe, and it is salmon, mysterious migratory creatures, which are the chosen captives. It is like caging swallows. Crammed into cages, they can only survive with the use of antibiotics and pesticides, and are made marketable by colouring their flesh with an additive banned in the USA. And to feed these imprisoned creatures, the seas are trawled for other fish, industrial fish, 5 pounds to produce 1 pound of salmon meat. It is the economics of the madhouse. And as we pollute the seas, we pollute our own life source. PCBs are industrial chemicals, some of the most poisonous substances known. These now infect almost the whole of the ocean's food chain.
Profit has no conscience, only a balance sheet. In its name, both animals and people are there to be exploited. In the last century, we shipped the world's poor across the oceans as slaves. Now we allow them to remain where they are, but enslave them just as surely by controlling their economies. It is for us that they rear meat and grow fodder. The 15 million children who die each year as a result of starvation are the living and dying testament to a world in crisis.
In the last 2 seconds of our evolutionary year, we have destroyed and poisoned at a rate unknown in the history of the Earth. We have elevated cruelty and greed to the status of a god, yet still pretend that nothing really is wrong. Growth and consumption have caused the problem, yet we're told that even more growth and consumption can cure it. Are we any richer, any happier, any more ennobled for all the death, the pain, the destruction?
We have bequeathed our children a world which contains less wonder than when we inherited it. We have poisoned their water, polluted their air, and laid much of their land waste. We are handing them a world which to us looked certain, but is now teetering on the brink of catastrophe. And still, governments do nothing. But you can.
Simply by giving up eating meat, poultry, fish, and slaughterhouse byproducts, you make an immediate contribution to ending the pain, the cruelty, and the destruction. Without meat, Britain would need only 1/3 of its land to grow food. We could replace the woodlands, eradicate the poisons from our soil, allow the waters to run clear. Across all continents, the effect would be astounding. The world itself would breathe a sigh of relief.
In our year of creation, we are but a blink of an eyelid away from devastation. In real time, perhaps a decade or two before the downward spiral becomes unstoppable.
The fine web of life, which has existed for millions of years, is trembling under our onslaught. It isn't ordained. It isn't fate. And every one of us can do something to stop it. Stop the killing by becoming vegetarian. You have the choice. And beneath, in its waters and its skies.
Humankind is just one of an unknown number of species of plants and animals that share this world. But we are the ones who hold dominion over all others. And every year, we exterminate perhaps 1,000 species in the name of progress on the pretext of development.
No one knows how or why, but some 4,000 million years ago, the planet Earth came into being. In that time, life has evolved on its surface. The first bacteria emerged. A miracle of evolution followed, and every expanse of water, layer of mud, and tract of land is inhabited. Jellyfish and spiders didn't make an appearance until the beginning of November. The first ferns popped up on November the 20th, at about the same time as fish began to inhabit the waters. Winged. And time is running out. Imagine the complete history of the world condensed into 1 year. A year which began on January the 1st. A few days later,
Development in pursuit of profit. We are severing the fine strands which make up the web of life, and the earth is suffering. But still, the killing goes on.